All right. And I think let's go ahead because we just have a half hour today. So more people will join in as the party gets going here. But I'd like to introduce everyone to Wendy Estela. She's a lawyer with 25 years of experience and works across industry, but really has started working quite a bit with designers, helping with their contracts, disputes, other issues that they're working through. So I really am excited we met Wendy at High Point Market, and we just found so many similarities and questions that we've been kind of pondering how to kind of make the best of your contracts, procurement, and everything around that. So Wendy, I think I'm going to go ahead and just hand it over
Sure.
to you. We'll get
Thank you
started.
very
Wendy's going
much.
to cover quite a few of these topics, and then the last 5 minutes or so we'll go into question and answer. So we'll go ahead and get started. Wendy, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. I will say I usually speak for an hour on these topics, so I'm going to be kind of compressed and doing some quick hits on specifically some of the issues I see and how they're usually tied to the non-design aspect of the contract process and the design process. So basically, you know, you've got your design contracts, and I find that most designers love the design part and they hate everything else. They hate it. The communication with the client starts to be a challenge with all the other pieces. The design part up front is the part the client likes too. So that's great. I never, or I should say, I rarely have a design client call me and say, oh, I really screwed up the design process. I need your help. It's more like, okay, everything after the design process becomes a problem. Okay, so let's just go through some of these issues, and this is also where, you know, we kind of align, because I think that Studio Mind has a great product here that they can help with some of these issues. And you know, I'm not trying to sell their product, but in coming together for this session today, I was thinking, like, I might as well talk to you about all these things that they can help you with, and kind of talk about the procurement related issues. So you know, I have just a small list here on the back of a piece of a back of an envelope, actually, that I was just going to talk about. And you know, the first thing I think of where clients, the homeowner client has an issue is with pricing transparency with procurement. And basically, designers always ask me, like, how should I describe how I'm pricing something for furnishings? And should I say it's a markup? Should I say it's a discount off retail? Should I say it's retail? Do I have to disclose it? Do I just pass up through my pricing? What do I do? And I always say that there's sort of like a spectrum. And I find that designers who are just starting out are doing one thing, and designers that are like kind of way down their path in their career are doing something different. So it's everything from people just starting out, not all people just starting out, but a lot of them will just kind of, quote, pass through their pricing, and they're not making any money, and they're also not charging for their time to do procurement. So that's one model. And then the other one is you've got a lot of designers that are charging a very high markup. They are charging for all of their time, placing orders, repricing orders if the client doesn't get back to them fast enough, everything. And they're making money on their time, they're making money on the product, and they're at the other end of the spectrum. And I'd say everyone else is somewhere in between. And I find that it's a big stress point for designers, because they don't know what the competition is. And when you go out there and you realize your competition really is everyone who's doing everything differently, and nobody is honest with each other about it. Like, I find that, especially on a local level, designers are great. There's a lot of camaraderie, but no one's really going into detail about this part of what they do. Okay, so I don't really have an answer for it, except that I have things that I recommend. And you know, what I recommend is just making sure that the client has an understanding that you're allowed to make money during this process, because if they don't understand that, you're going to have huge problems. Like, a lot of times the homeowner client thinks that your job is to get the cheapest price for them. So really, I say that during this phase, whatever it is you're doing, you really just have to be clear in explaining to them the value you add and the fact that you're allowed to make money, because these homeowner clients don't understand what this industry does. Like, they really don't understand that it's not your job to get them the cheapest price. And that's always this big issue that designers come across. So, you know, rolling into these other issues, like, okay, the client is shopping me, right? The client wants to take my design. They want to take everything I specified and buy it on their own. I find that at the heart of that is what I just said. They don't even realize, like, that your job isn't to get them the cheapest price. So they think they're doing something helpful, and it ends up actually very much hurting the relationship. So, you know, the concept of transparency and pricing is interesting. Again, you know, I don't want you to kind of lay it out, but there's got to be some way to manage that issue where you're not avoiding it with your client, you're educating them, but you're also making money. And so, you know, I think, you know, the solution I could recommend for that. There's ways in your contract that you can do this. And if you're very comfortable speaking with your clients about this and comfortable saying, like, I'm going to make money this way, that's really the answer. But when you have a tool like Studio Mind that can show you everything, like show the client everything, it really helps with this concept of some sort of transparency, because that theme has been out in the industry for some time, and everybody's on a different side of, you know, really what you have to show the client. So that's one topic. Another issue in this time of procurement is just the management of multiple orders. It's very hard for a designer to do this. Many designers are just them and maybe like one assistant. Even in bigger firms, it's hard to manage all of these little pieces. So, you know, with procurement, I always say for the designers, I say, you don't take the risk of delay, because you just don't, you can't promise the client that something's going to come in at a particular time. So I always say the designer shouldn't have the risk of that. Now, the client doesn't love that because they want to know when their stuff is coming. So it's a tough thing to sell to a client if you truly explain it that, you know, you don't have the ability to guarantee when anything's coming. It's coming from all different sources, right? You don't know for sure if something's going to be delayed or coming on time. And the client sometimes gets frustrated. And again, it's a hard thing to manage as a business. And now take that and spread it across multiple projects, like 10 projects that you might be managing at one time. It's a lot. So, you know, again, having a tool that does this, or a business, a partner that helps you with this, where it's a one-stop shop to help you manage the details of the procurement, is extremely helpful. And to me, it's like such an obvious solution, because again, I have so many designers who are like, I love what I'm doing, but I hate the purchasing part. So there's that. Other issues I see with contracts that not so much cause problems for the homeowner, but for the designer, the proposal process. So you're now saying, here's the price for everything. Here are these proposals. You have 7 days to respond. If you don't respond in 7 days, the price is going to go, it might change, or I have to at least reprice it. You know, the price might not be what it was originally. Now, depending how you are pricing for that procurement time, if you are expecting to get paid for your time and everything related to procurement just based on your markup, all of that extra time you spend because your client delayed you and you now have to reprice things is eating your revenue stream. It's taking away from your profit. So that's one thing to think about. I often put in contracts that the client has to respond within X number of days. And if we have to re-propose anything, there's going to be additional charge. And also the designer has no guarantee the price hasn't changed. Now, having seen what Studio Mind can do, when you see the pricing and the actual inventory and everything, that's amazing to me. And it just seems like a natural solution. But, you know, again, that's just one issue you have to manage as a designer, is managing the expectations of your client. And then what happens if that item is no longer available? Now you're creating even more work for yourself. And it's interesting because, again, designers price everything differently. I have seen a few that do everything on a flat rate. So they just say, hey, client, I will perform your project, design and everything for a flat rate. When you do that, you're now at risk, because, you know, every time that you have to rework something or you're wasting time, you're not efficient, you're losing money. You're losing because you're starting with this proposition that you're going to make this huge amount of money. But if you screw something up, honestly, you make a mistake, you've got to do the rework. If they start to want more and try to squeeze more into that flat rate, you're at risk. And yes, this whole procurement process can create a lot of risk that you can't manage. You know, flipping to the other side, when the product arrives, there's damage. There's always damage. That's the one thing I hear from everyone, is that The amount of furniture and items that arrive damaged is unbelievable compared to how it used to be in the industry. Now, I haven't been in the industry forever, but I do know that I have heard that from multiple people that that's exactly what's happening now. So, you know, spending your time managing, fixing issues, and just kind of repairs and things like that really takes away from your profit. Let's see what time to, okay, I'm doing pretty well with time here. So anyway, other issues I see are in contracts. Like the best thing you can do with regard to procurement and the pricing with procurement is make sure you have clarity. One area that's hard to have a lot of clarity with is freight. And I have dealt with so many different like approaches to freight. I've seen people take an amount and estimate it and say it's going to be like 25% of everything. That could be a big amount, or it might not be enough. I've also seen the issue of, how do I even explain this to a client? They don't even understand freight, shipping, freight, local delivery, all of that, install day, they don't always understand it. So you have to spend the time explaining and educating to them what all those pieces are. And a lot of times they're very surprised by the bill they get for it, because we're in a world of Amazon and free shipping, or a Pottery Barn and a flat rate shipping. And it's can be challenging for a designer to explain to a client why their shipping is so much more expensive. And even worse, let's say that you have a product that is available to the general public, but it's also available to you. And let's say that the client does try to shop you, and now they find that product for about the same price or better than you offered it for. You have to charge them freight or shipping, but they get free shipping from wherever they found it. That is a scenario that can happen. What happens to the designer in that situation? Now you're losing credibility with the client. So those are very tricky issues. And I do think, I tend to see disputes towards the end of the projects. And that makes sense because everybody's happy in the beginning. It's the honeymoon period. It coincides with the design period. Everyone involved with the project starts to get tired at the end. They start to get fatigued from the project. There have been delays. And typically I'll see disputes at the end. It's the last invoice, the end of the project. And the things that clients really raise issues about are the bill they got after the fact for freight or storage or something like that. So that's just sort of like always an issue because you typically don't know the price up front for what that cost is going to be. So it's challenging to manage. Designers are across the board how they do it. Like I said, some people are trying to be creative and come up with like a fee. Some people mark up freight, which I think it's already way more than the client is expecting. So to mark it up, I think is a little risky if you're trying to keep the client happy, but there are designers that do it and do it effectively. So another thing. We talked about the claims for damage, but it is important to note that when you have clients and they have items arriving damaged and you now have to spend your time fixing that, again, you've probably not priced in all this time into your own estimate for yourself that you're going to be returning everything or trying to get things repaired. That can eat away at your profit. But also, some people just don't charge for that at all. And the expectations, you don't want to be like a warranty house. You're a designer. So I just think that that's a tough one to deal with. And I think that can really eat away at your ability to make money. And one really important thing that we were talking about leading up to this call, and it's just an interesting thing that people have called me about, is if anyone takes credit card payments. That's the first question. If I could have raise of hands, I can't get people to raise their hands right now, but a lot of people take credit cards. If you take a credit card payment and the client has paid you in full for everything that they've ordered, okay, because that's the best practice, to get paid in full up front. Now the items arrive and they have a change of heart. They don't like it anymore. They say it's not it just looks different than the picture. The dye lot is wrong. Something's wrong. And as the designer that they are lying. That You know that it's fine. They just don't like it anymore and they want to get their money back. Now you have a dispute, and now the client tries to get a charge back on their credit card. They call the credit card company and they say, I didn't get the product I was promised. I don't want it. I want to return it, and I would like you to challenge it on my credit card. Well, in that case, that's a very tough one to challenge as a designer. You might win ultimately, but you also have to prove your case. It's like a mini battle. You don't want to have to deal with that. And if you're with a business like Studio Mine, a partner like this is going to handle that for you. That ends up being their risk. And I thought that was like kind of a light bulb moment for me when I was talking to Laura and the others about this service that's being offered, because that's a big risk to a small business. And you know, you do have clients that want to put things on credit cards because they want the points. And who are you to say no, especially if you're just starting out? I find that you're more willing to take a credit card. I do always recommend cash or check or wire transfer, but a credit card is our reality. And like I said, people are spending a lot of money with you and they want those points. So it's a risk. I tend to also find it specifically in the window treatment business. There's a lot of chargebacks for whatever reason, but that's a real issue. And depending on how things are going with the economy and people, you know, spending too much money and regretting it after, it's an issue and a risk that you could face, and you're not always going to win. And even if the client gives back the merchandise to you, now you're stuck with it because it's probably not returnable to the vendor. Could you sell it? Yes, but it's just, again, it's just not what you want. That's not the goal of the contract. And just keep that in mind also for e-commerce stores. You can have the credit card chargeback piece would be handled by Studio Mine, which I think is great. I have a few more minutes and then we'll open up to questions, but just a very you know, high level review of other issues that come up in contracts. The biggest thing that I like to say is that your design contract is there to protect you, yes, but it's really a tool to help you communicate with your client better. The legal part of the contract that's there to protect you is to make sure, like, if you get sued, you're not going to court, you're going to arbitration. If you get sued, it's only for a certain dollar amount. You can't be sued for, you know, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's an amount related to the contract price. You know, there's no warranties, there's certain legal protections, but beyond that, your contract is there to really establish what's being done and how it's being done, and to really build expectations between you and your client. So when you have a clear contract that shows what you're doing, what the pricing is, all in the first few pages, like very clear, there's no questions, you're going to have an advantage. So I tend to set up these contracts in a way that you have a letter of agreement. It's very conversational. They can understand what they're being charged. If you're using a partner like Studio Mine, you've got another tool that kind of lends itself to this like collaborative process. They can see right into what you're doing. I just think it makes a lot of sense. Every step of the way, I like to have some sort of sign off and approval. So I recommend that you have, after the design, you literally have the client sign off on the design. And then obviously they're signing all proposals. And even at the end of the project, you might not get a signature from them, but you should actually write back to the client and close out the project in a way that you say, thank you, you know, our services are now complete. We look forward to working with you in the future. And when we work together in the future, we will be issuing you a new letter of agreement and terms and conditions. So that way you kind of like wrap it up with a bow and you're done with the contract. And to me, that's the best approach. Other things I recommend with the contract are if you have marketing materials already and they're beautiful and they've got photographs and everything like that, or you have a proposal, I recommend that whatever you use for a contract, you kind of build into the same look and feel of your marketing materials, because it just, again, establishes that tone with your client where you are selling them the service, and the contract shouldn't be a thing that is like scary. And if you put the contract into the same look and feel of your marketing materials, it just sort of flows. And the contract itself has sections that they have to read because it talks about process and the steps of the design process. So that's very important. It's a recommendation. Not everybody does it, but I would say that anyone that retains me to rewrite their contract, they get something back that reads more like a letter with sections, and it can easily be put into the form of a more, pretty proposal package. And I always recommend that as designers, you're making things beautiful. So why don't you make your contract beautiful? There's no law against that. Like, make it look good, make it reflect your business, and don't allow it to be something that you're selling to them. You get them on the hook, they want to hire you, then you email them this like document and it's like dumped on them and they don't want to read it. So I recommend trying to make your contracts as attractive as possible. And again, that kind of like blends in with the procurement phase. If you run that through Studio Mind, you've got a beautiful display to show them. And I think that is something that benefits everybody. So those are kind of like the high level things I want to talk about. I do have a few other recommendations, again, kind of quick hits. Boundaries. I recommend that in your contract, you identify who you're going to be making contact with as far as the client goes. Are you dealing with both the husband and wife? Can the wife make decisions on behalf of the husband? That should be in there. How do you prefer to be communicated with? Do you want text messages? Do you want phone calls? Do you want everything to go through email? Are you a person like me who has porous boundaries and will take phone calls at night? That's me. Some people will do it. I talked to someone last night, a new designer. She's like, I don't care. They can call me anytime. I'm just so happy to have this project. And I said, call me back in 6 months when you're busy and you are sick of these people calling you at night and on the weekends. So, but identify that in your contract, because you're setting the expectation already for how you're going to work, what the process is, how we're going to work together. It's a relationship, and really everything you're putting in that contract is dictating how that relationship's going to go. It's almost like you are putting together a prenuptial agreement, and the marriage is the design phase and the procurement phase. But if you have that prenuptial agreement, you've already kind of worked out the details of how you're going to work together, and if it doesn't work out, how you get out of it. So speaking of getting out of it, disputes and terminations, you should be able to both exit the contract, and it should be very clear who gets what upon that exit. So if you're doing flat rate pricing, you might want to consider, if you are the designer terminating the contract during, let's say, the design phase where you've been paid in advance, how much are you giving back? Are you keeping it all? What if you terminated before you even delivered anything? Obviously, you really don't want to be keeping that fee. That kind of thing has to be thought out ahead of time, and there are ways to address that. You might have already spent some time working on the contract, so it's justified, on the design, so it's justified to keep some, but maybe not all. That should all be addressed in the contract. And finally, my last tip, because I know we're getting close here on time, is in your dispute resolution section. Under no circumstances do I think an interior designer should ever be in court fighting about a contract. I often say that if you're in court, you've already lost, because your clients are very wealthy. They're going to outlawyer you. They're going to just spend money to make your life difficult. So make sure your contracts say that disputes will be resolved by arbitration, not mediation, or binding arbitration. I always say that there needs to be an arbitrator who is experienced in interior design contracts, because that's going to really narrow the field down to someone who's going to be able to read the contract, understand it, and make a decision probably in your favor. So those are important things. And during the dispute, everything's confidential and there's no disparagement between the parties. So I have now spoken like a monologue for this long. I'm going to stop. I'm going to open it up for any questions. Sorry about that.
No, thank you, Wendy. This is fantastic. I'd love to hear questions though from everyone.
Please ask questions. And I've got, if we need a few extra minutes, I'm here too.
Thank you, Wendy. I'll go ahead and open it up. Does anyone have a question? I'm sure there has to be something in there. Feel free, you can just come on off mute. I know it's kind of strange on a call.
And if not, it's fine. I mean, I'm open to answering any questions after the fact. I'm on Instagram, whatever it is. If anyone submits questions, I'll give you answers. And yeah, you know, I like helping out.
And I'm going to put Wendy, your Instagram here in our chat so everyone can see that, as well as your website. I personally think the idea of the arbitration and an arbitrator in interior design contracts is something I haven't heard before. So I think that's something really interesting to keep in your contract, just to make sure you're protected, as well as the industry is.
Yeah,
We
I've
all
yet
do
to
this,
see
we're
it.
all lift each other up.
Yeah, I've yet to see it in any of the templates I've seen floating around. But the idea there is that, you know, people ask me all the time, like, what's mediation? What's arbitration? And there's a difference. Mediation is just a negotiation, and you could show up for it and you literally walk in the room and the other party can say, I changed my mind, I'm leaving. And you've already spent all the money to prepare for that day. You've hired a mediator who's just there to get you to compromise. The arbitrator is a private judge. That's basically what it is. And so you're choosing that person to pick a winner or loser. And when they pick the winner or loser, it gets entered in court, and that's it. And it's all private. So if you're going to pick someone to pick the winner or loser, you want to pick someone who's got the skill to understand the contract, because you know what? Many lawyers, including at my own firm, don't no, don't put that online. I'm just kidding. No, but they don't understand. They don't understand that you can have a design contract where you're doing a ton of design and you're getting paid for your time doing the design, right? You could be paid $50,000 for a design and never deliver a piece of furniture. And to the average person who's not in a luxury industry, that sounds absurd. And lawyers are average and judges are average. These are like public servants, okay? They don't have these big fancy houses with all this stuff, so they think it's ludicrous. So why would you be at the mercy of some judge that sees all sorts of cases? Have arbitration and pick a decision maker that specifically has demonstrated experience on their resume with this industry. And that's gonna be hard to find. You probably will end up with someone in the construction industry, but still they have to have at least read one design contract. This is your whole future if you have a huge dispute. So that's a really important piece. And I feel like it's always buried in what we call the boilerplate of the contract. It's at the end. Everyone, by the time they get to that part, they're tired. Everyone's like, yeah, this is fine. Let me sign. So my last tip is I always recommend reading the contract twice, front to back, and then read it back to front, because there's a lot of important stuff at the back. And it's so easy to just be like, whatever, this is just lawyer stuff. Yeah, it's lawyer stuff. I wrote it and I know it's in there. But
and
honestly,
we know how it could affect us too.
I want those homeowner clients to get fatigued like that and just agree to it, because I want them to know the pricing for your sake, but for my sake and for like the fight that might arise down the road, I want them to just sign off on that, because nobody ever disputes it when they're reading the contract.
That's a great point.
I
think that's a really great point. And I think the idea also about chargebacks is interesting too. So for everyone who joined a little bit later, just a heads up on that. So we offer e-commerce and e-commerce platforms, so you can make your own shoppable design or your own e-commerce store that goes on your own website. It can be linked to your Instagram, but we take care of all of the credit card transactions and customer service and fulfilling the orders. So we're taking on a lot of that for you. So you don't have to worry about a chargeback if, you know, something happens, this beautiful faux tree is delivered from your online store and then they try to charge back. We go to bat, we take care of all of that. So just knowing that there are partners out there, like someone like Wendy, and with Studio Mind, there are places that you can kind of let us take over as the expert and work with you in partnership as well. So
I say it's hard enough to run your business, and you know, there are things that you're good at and things that are maybe not your favorite. And so if you find that the procurement piece is not your favorite, this is definitely the way to go. And with the legal stuff, like, please don't write your contract with ChatGPT or like, I mean, like, there's a role for all of that stuff, but outsource that piece, you know, and you know, as you grow your business, if you don't have to deal with the office management stuff, you get an assistant for that. Like, there's certain things, so you really get back down to what you're good at, which is your skill set. And I see that across industries. Like, for example, doctors are really bad at running their doctor practices, and lawyers are bad at running their business of their firm, not being lawyers. So where you have the ability to move that outside, it's great. And be honest with yourself. Are you making money on that procurement piece? Like, unless you're really charging for everything, like these ones I was telling you on the end of the spectrum that are charging for every minute they spend on procurement. First of all, if you're not doing that, you're leaving money on the table, but also you're at a bigger risk of losing money on procurement, which is definitely not a situation you want to be in.
Absolutely.
Because you'll find yourself saying, I'm making all this, I'm doing all this business, I have all these clients, I have these huge projects, why don't I have any money? Like, I've heard that one many times. So sit back and look at it and really say, I mean, do the cost benefit analysis. I think this is just such a great opportunity for the right designers.
And I think the last thing too, which it just popped in my head, so I guess I have a question, is just the idea of making sure that you also have insurance as well. And I believe, is that liability insurance typically for an interior design business?
You want general liability insurance, which is like business insurance, but you also want professional liability for the design piece. So if you design something incorrectly and everything is built to your design, or the client's relying on that design and now everything was ordered incorrectly because you had a wrong measurement or something, in the event of like a catastrophic mistake, which is different for everyone, dollar-wise catastrophic, you have professional liability insurance that'll cover, it literally covers your mistakes. It pays out if you screw up, just like a doctor's malpractice insurance. So you can get that, and you should get that as a designer, especially if you're doing anything with like renovations, if you're doing anything like architecture related, anything beyond a floor plan, and even maybe a floor plan. I don't know. I mean, if somebody is ordering tens of thousands of dollars of furniture based on your floor plan and you screwed it up and now they hate everything that they have, then, you know, that's a case for insurance. And then there's also the issue of when the vendor goes out of business, which we didn't even touch upon today. But that's another thing. Like, if you have like a Mitchell Gold Bob Williams of, you know, months ago, if you're with Studio Mind, that's their issue. Okay. If you're on your own, that's an issue for you, your bank, if you use a debit card, or your insurance company. And the insurance doesn't always cover it. So, you know, just other issues. That's a trickier one to deal with. So you have to look as a designer at all the risks you have related to a project and figure out, how do I do all this and still make money? So isn't that a like rosy picture we're painting today?
Hey, you know, we have to make sure we have all this in order for it to blossom and become profitable, because you can't, sometimes you don't know where the hole in the bucket is, like what's going on exactly. So to have someone like you that we can connect with as designers, I think is really important and impactful. And moving forward, just know that, you know, if you want to get in contact, her information is in the chat. We'll send a follow-up email after. This will also be on YouTube, and we'll do some snippets on Instagram as well.
Right.
But Wendy, I just wanted to thank you again for your time. I know your time is very precious, and
thank you
much. Thank you everyone for joining. And if you have any questions, you know, follow-up things, you can always reach out to trade@allmind.com. And also next week, we'll be having a Regina Andrews Spotlight meeting, same time, same place. So you know where to catch us. But Wendy, we appreciate you. And thank you all so much. Have fun. Good week designing. And if you ever need anything, please reach out.
Take care. Thank you, everyone.
Everybody have a great night. Thank you.